Hey, before we get to today's great episode, wanted to let you know of a new exciting thing going on for the Lounge. For the first time since we started this podcast, the Lounge has entered into a partnership with a company that is aligned in how we think. Completely stop gambling. So Betttr is giving away 200 free subscriptions for life to the first 200 users from this podcast. Download Betttr, find the link in the show notes, or searching Betttr in your app store. So it's Betttr, BETTR, quit gambling. Search for that on the App Store or click into the link in the podcast show notes. So I'll see you on Betttr. And now to today's episode. Welcome into the Gambling Recovery Lounge. My name is Eric and I'm a compulsive gambler in recovery. And my last bet was on June 15th, 2021. Welcome back into the lounge, everyone. Tonight is experience number 15 and super excited about tonight's episode because we're going to do something unique that we have not done yet until tonight. So really excited about that. Before bring in our guest, co-host tonight with me, you know his name, Edgardo, my partner, who's done such a great job producing the podcast and doing all the great editing and producing the final product. And he did co-host with me several episodes ago when we interviewed a couple in recovery. And he's back tonight with me to co-host. Edgardo, how are you feeling? More or less nervous
Hello.
than the first time?
A little less nervous, but very excited to get through this with an amazing friend and a great partner in Gam-anon.
That's right. All right. So Edgardo just kind of tipped his hat there. So we are going to bring in now Gina. So let me just level set this for a minute. We've talked from the very beginning about this podcast, and we've had, Edgardo was interviewed, I think, on episode 2. And then we've had a couple of couples that we've brought in and talked to together. And tonight we're going to hear from Gina. And Gina has a very unique story and situation because she's an affected loved one of a compulsive gambler. And in her case, the compulsive gambler is not somebody who's in recovery. So her story and the journey is going to be very focused on what happens for somebody whose life has been impacted by the compulsive gambler. So we're going to get into a lot of that story for Gina, and we'll see where all this goes. So we're super excited. Gina, welcome into the lounge. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with both of you. I am doing well this week.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. So, as we always do with each episode, Gina, the icebreaker topic first is for your recovery song. As somebody who's an affected loved one and going through your own recovery journey, what song do you identify as your recovery song, and a little bit about why?
Thanks for asking. My recovery song is called C.S. Lewis by Brooke Fraser. British writer, scholar, think of the Chronicles of Narnia. The song starts with a quote by him that says, "If I find in myself desires nothing in this world can satisfy, I can only conclude that I was not made for here." I think my Gam-anon journey has been a very spiritual one. I came to this program with a long history of having a close relationship with my higher power that I wouldn't say fell apart, but changed a lot throughout the course of my marriage to a compulsive gambler. And I feel like this is a bit of a homecoming for me. And this song just really resonated because one of the biggest discoveries that I'm sure I'll talk about at some point tonight throughout my recovery journey, the last year and a half, has been that homecoming spiritually, but also I think recognizing that as I got lost in this relationship with an addict, I really started to hope and wish that that person could fulfill needs that he could never fulfill. And I think what I'm discovering is that no matter how healthy that person was, those needs are there regardless. And it made me think of people with addictions too, that I think we're seeking to fill things that no person, no thing on this earth can really fill. And so this song is very much about that. It's a very spiritual song. She goes on to say, kind of going hand in hand with what I just said, she talks about, I will sigh and with all creation groan as I wait for hope to come for me. Our time is but a breath, so we better breathe it. I was made to live. I was made to love. I was made to know you, and hope is coming for me. This program has very much been my hope. My higher power has been my hope. And I feel like I've been found again. I was lost for a while and now I'm found. So,
wow. Thank you for, okay.
Brooke Fraser. Yeah.
Brooke
Fraser. She's a New Zealand artist. And the song is called C.S. Lewis.
C.S. Lewis.
C.S. Lewis song, I think it might be titled.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm definitely going to check that out. I'm sure everyone else out there will now too, because that was really, really beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. All right, so let's dive into it, Gina. Let's maybe just level set. If you can just give a little bit of just a summary of your situation, the timeline of where that's at as you sit today. And then we're going to go kind of backwards and really kind of talk about the story from a while back and get up until where we are now. But if you can, for the audience, just kind of level set how you came about to be here tonight.
Sure. So my first meeting was August 10th of 2023. So I've been in program for a year and a half at this point. And currently I have filed for divorce. It was September 2023. It was a month after I started program. Gosh, I just can't believe it's been this long. So yeah, some major hurdles, but those things happened once I started program, and they were things that needed to happen in the timing that they did. And so, yeah, it's been a hard journey, but currently my husband and I have not lived together since July of 2023. So I started program right after I had asked him to move out. And then made those legal decisions along the way to protect myself. We also have a 6.5-year-old daughter that I have full custody of. He is not in recovery. I think he says he attended 2 online meetings. I'm aware of one, and that was early on when I started in my program. But yeah, is very much living the pretty much exact same lifestyle he has lived for many years at this point.
Okay. Thank you for the overview. I think that helps give everybody kind of an assessment of where you're at and how you got here over this year and a half or so. So I'd like to go, my first question is to kind of go much further back than that. Kind of like I often will ask the compulsive gambler in an interview about their story from when they grew up, because I often find that, and certainly this is true for myself, that there's some kind of emotional trauma that we go through in our lives, sometimes developing very early, and things from that eventually manifest into what becomes an addiction later. And for some of us, that becomes much later in life, and others earlier. So from somebody who's not dealing with an addiction directly as yourself, still going back to like your early days of childhood and growing up, was there addiction at all around you in your family? Was your home life stable? Did you suffer any kind of trauma along the way in your own life?
So addiction, no. My dad does drink to soothe his nerves, I would say, but it's something he controls well. He would, abstain for 3 months to just kind of make sure he was good. I remember him talking about that when I was young, but to have 2 or 3 glasses of wine a night was not abnormal for him when I was young. But yeah, really no addiction issues, but trauma, yes, lots of disruption. My parents got divorced when I was 12. There's a lot around that. I never witnessed them like fighting and having a hard time. But my dad kind of went through, I think he was probably in his late 30s, early 40s at the time. He went through probably what we call like a midlife crisis. I mean, my mom's amazing. She did everything she could, even to the point of starting a daycare out of our home when I was young. I think I was about 7 when that started, just to be with my brother and I. I'm renting this home from my mom where I grew up. So lots of awful memories in this space that I'm in now, sadly. Long story short, my parents' marriage really fell apart. There was a lot of disruption at that time. My parents very much loved each other. I think my dad, I know he paid this house off. He tried to help support us financially. My mom had to go back to school. I have memories all through high school of her sitting on the couch. I'd come home in the evening after whatever I was doing after class, and she'd just be surrounded by textbooks. She's an amazing woman. I do want to say this because this really plays a role, I think, in how I've shown up in my own marriage. My dad was not honest about a lot of things. I remember when they got pregnant with my second half brother, he didn't tell us until after he was born. You know, my oldest brother and I would go visit him during the summers because we were in high school at the time, middle school and high school. And he just kind of he didn't want to ruffle any feathers or cause any more stress. And so he withheld a lot of things, which as a young person, wasn't okay. That taught me a lot of hard stuff. And I lost a lot of respect for him. I knew that wasn't okay. It was not helpful. So yeah, I think there's a lot of trauma that came from that. But as we're talking about right now, the lying was very harmful. And then to have spent 20 years with someone who is lying to me about a lot of things just brought that up, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, thank you for sharing that. And I think regardless, everyone has problems in life, right? Whether we become addicts or not, everyone has challenges and goes through really difficult times. And I think it all stems from somewhere in our past. We don't just all of a sudden in adulthood face these things and it was the first time anything bad has happened and struggles have happened. And I think it's always good to reflect back to where we came from, and because sometimes we block stuff out, I think, from early on, and you just had this revelation as you were talking now, right? Which is great. And I think as we talk more about, the addiction part for your husband and how much is there a correlation there for where you were in that process and how much of an impact that had. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So when did you meet your husband?
We met, it was August of 2004. I was 25 and he was 34. He's a bit older than I am. We were living in San Francisco. We met actually through a dog walker I hired. Yeah, it's funny. There's a joke in San Francisco that there's more dogs than there are kids. And it's probably still true to this day. Lots and lots
true
of
in
dogs
our house
that
for
city.
sure here in Los Angeles. That's for
sure. You guys would fit well in the city. Yeah, so I was working, I'm a nurse, and I was working I just moved to San Francisco. I had one girlfriend there. I think I'd lived there about a month and was working 12-hour shifts. And so I needed someone I had this great dog for 15 years. She was my everything. But I needed help during the day. So I hired this woman and we hit it off right away. And she ended up asking me to go out on this triple date with someone who was actually one of my husband's roommates. Nothing came of that date other than I just became great friends with these people. So over the course of a couple of months, we just were becoming friends, thinking we would spend time together. This is interesting, thinking back to this. Everyone else went home and he stayed after and was talking to me just about his life. And he talked about being stuck. And that was something that he still talks about to this day. This was 20 years ago. He was very stuck in his life at 34. And I had a gambler tell me not that long ago that poker players, there's a term when you say you're stuck, it means something as a poker term. So I thought that was interesting too, looking back, that maybe he'd had a big loss that night. I don't know, but definitely was lost. He was lost. And at that time, anyway, so over the course of a few months, we kept spending time together, got these great tickets to the symphony. So he called me up and said, what are you doing? I was driving to the gym at the time. And he said, go home and put on something pretty. He said, I'm going to pick you up in an hour. And I was down for it. And I said, okay. And so we went and just had the best time. And from there, the next time we got together, I thought we were going to he approached me and was like, there's something I need to talk to you about. And I thought for sure he was going to say, we're just friends, I think I've been leading you on, that kind
Mhm.
of a conversation. And it was actually just the opposite. And so we both were kind of moving into that space of wanting to be together and having feelings for each other. And from there, we were a couple. And then that went on for about 5.5 years. We dated. So yeah, that's how we met. That's how it started. And there were problems right from the beginning. And just looking back, I think I was just young and naive. I didn't know what to ask. I didn't know how to stand up for myself. We liked each other. We cared about each other a lot. We had an incredible group of friends. We were having a really great time together. And I just wanted to make it work. But looking back, there was a lot of disrespect, I think, right from the beginning. He's a fantastic person, just, life of the party, massive ego, very good at a lot of things, very witty, just absolutely loved by his friends. Even to this day, his close buddies have said to me in recent conversations, we know he's struggling. We know what you're going through, and this is hard, but we love him and we're going to keep hanging out with him. Like he is the most fun we've ever had in our life. Like that's just who he is. He's a fantastic golfer. It's interesting. So I'm trying to paint this picture. That wasn't why I fell in love with him, but he has this big personality. And I found out very soon after we started dating that wasn't really who he is. When he was with me, I would say he's a much more depressed person. I think there's this show going on and this lifestyle that he's living up to and this facade. And I think I started to see that early on, and I was confused by it. I didn't know how to make sense of it at the time. But yeah, just he had been, he's almost 10 years older than me, and he had been living a single life for a very long time, had hardly dated anyone, and just came and went as he pleased. I think he was making decent money. I had no idea about the gambling. It was absolutely happening at that time. I remember, I don't know, a month or two into us dating, he dropped 30 grand and went to the World Series poker tournament in Vegas. And I didn't think much of it. And I don't know why, just things like that. As I told you, I was kind of reliving all of this the last few hours before we met tonight, thinking back to these old memories. And
So he was honest when he did that $30,000 buy-in for the poker. He was honest with you about it. And did he explain that this was like gambling was a thing for him, or did it really not evolve into a conversation beyond?
I don't even think the word gambling was used. I mean, he was going to play poker, and I thought, okay, that's what I don't remember having any sort of thought around it. Gambling was not something that I grew up around. I mean, I live very close to Tahoe. So, growing up, I'd be in Tahoe and I might walk through a casino, but that was pretty much all I knew. And he didn't talk. I knew he played poker with his friends and his roommates, but I had no idea. And why I didn't think, $30,000. I mean, even thinking back, I never asked questions about money. Nothing. I don't know why I didn't ask more, but I remember he sent me a postcard from Vegas while he was gone. So I knew where he was. I knew what he was doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it.
So,
okay. So that was his first big disclosure of gambling really early on. But it never really, so what can you remember back? So after that one-time event, was it years that went by before gambling came up again in plain sight, or did it really not until many, many years later?
It did not until many years later. It was 6 years into our marriage, 10 years into knowing him, that I discovered he had a poker problem, a gambling problem. Wow. So it was many years. I remember about 2 years into us dating, we got married. So that was 2004. We got married in 2010. A couple years into dating, I wanted to take a break. I remember we spent a month technically apart, but it was just this, I think it was me trying to set a boundary because something was really wrong. The relationship was not going well in many ways, and there was no commitment. So we both, agreed we wanted to get married, but yet things were not moving forward. And I think for me, I knew what I wanted in my life. And so I took this break, but there was a lot of hardship going on. And looking back, there was a lot I didn't know about him. We weren't living together. We weren't sharing finances. he, as I mentioned, he's an avid golfer. So I don't know if there's such thing as like a side addiction, but that is his primary, that is his reason for living. And the only reason I say that, it could be gambling. I just don't know enough about his gambling to speak to it, but he spent most of his time, and still to this day, on a golf course. I now know that gambling is a huge part of that. With him personally, I don't know to what extent, but yeah, there were just a lot of, he was living pretty much as a bachelor, but trying to have a relationship. And then we got married, and he still was pretty much living like a bachelor and moved into marriage, is probably the easiest way to try to describe it.
So when you got
lots of
married
secrets.
you get married in 2016.
2010.
So, sorry, 2010.
Yeah.
And then you said in 2016 is when you found out about all the gambling. So
Yeah.
when you got married in 2010, you then moved in together, I assume, right away to where you are now, right?
No, we were living in San Francisco at the time. I'm in north of San Francisco, in my hometown at the moment, but yeah.
Got it. Okay. And in those first 6 years, he's out living this bachelor kind of lifestyle, but gambling really hasn't come up at all again. He's not sneaking off to Las Vegas or Tahoe and not telling you. He's just kind of out there in the world.
Well, there was a lot of traveling, and so the other thing was it was as if he wasn't married. I mean, he would go on trips. I would get told last minute. I didn't always know where he was going. I had no idea what he was doing there. And then he wouldn't call me while he was there. So I don't know. I really didn't know gambling was an issue at all. We were in therapy a lot. So just a couple of things I want to mention that I think are important points before we got married, because we dated so long. 2008, the market crashed. So he had a lot of money he manages people's money in the stock market for a living. He owned multiple properties at that time. He had really gotten in over his head. He bought a huge house in Tahoe. So I think it was close, if not $1 million. His family was going to go in on it with him. Everyone backed out, and he bought it anyway. Again, I knew nothing about him financially, which is crazy to think of all the questions I didn't ask. But the market crash, he lost everything. He lost almost all his retirement. He lost all these properties he had. And he still speaks about that to this day. You know, I just thought the way he described it, and again, he never gave me a lot of details, that things just went south and he overinvested. Well, little did I know he was gambling in the market. I'm sure he was absolutely overinvested. So there were just all these red flags, you know, kind of leading up to when we got married. And then the other thing too, I want to say is that sports are a huge part of his life since he was very, very young. I mean, probably 6, 7 years old. He has just a lot of stories of he comes from a broken home and had a lot of trauma in his younger days with his parents. And I think sports were a huge outlet for him. That slowly started to show up. Again, I didn't really know what I was seeing, but just on our honeymoon, even, yeah, I mean, we had a fantastic wedding, so great, so much fun. And then we had this whole trip planned to Canada. And it was in October. It was World Series, and the San Francisco Giants were in the series that year. And then one of his close friends had gifted us 2 weeks in Whistler. And we get to Whistler, and the World Series is happening. And I remember us going out to dinner, and he wanted to watch the game, which was fine. Like, we both liked watching the baseball game and stuff. But everything went south those last 2 weeks. Like, looking back, I remember him telling me, "This is our honeymoon." And he was like, "I'm bored. I want to go home." He was just checked out. And looking back, like, he couldn't gamble. We were stuck in the snow. We were in this great, I mean, there was plenty to do. Like, it was so sad. I was so sad. I just did not understand what was going on. And that was the very beginning of our marriage. But looking back now, you know, not being able to bet on games. I mean, this was 2010, like, cell phones were different. Social media was different. Sure. There was a lot we didn't have back then. I don't know. Did you guys have like DraftKings and all those? I mean, I don't know what there was at that time. All the pools,
the fantasy sports,
fantasy football, and all of that. But
for sure.
Yeah, I think he was like totally lost.
Yeah, 2010.
It was very disheartening.
I can tell you just from my own journey of sports gambling, 2010, I had already been in mobile sports betting at that point for nearly a decade. So it was very, very prevalent already by that point. So certainly if he was secluded in his own head and he couldn't partake in that activity, there you saw the remnants of somebody
Yeah.
In a life situation where should have been very wonderful and happy, and
Happy and connected
instead
and stuff.
that and that's the mind of an addict. That's exactly what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah,
Okay,
just
so
thinking about that same behavior, like I see it now, like throughout our whole marriage, like what happened to him at that time. I just didn't know what I was seeing, like just so spinning, you know.
yeah, I mean, as you tell this story, I'm looking at Edgardo and I'm thinking he must be relating a lot of our own journey when you talked about separate finances and not knowing anything for you. I mean, this is very much the way our relationship was too. And that's why things didn't appear, because I was able to hide it so easily. But
And absolutely, with, what you're talking about in regards to now looking back, you sort of see these red flags and you're thinking to yourself, wow, they were there and I didn't really see them at the time or pay attention to them at the time. I don't know if it would have made a difference. Maybe, maybe not. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it, and I think this is what we learn in Gam-anon, is being able to look back and reflect and being able to spot those red flags now and knowing that we've learned how to spot them now.
Absolutely.
so now carry on the story as
Mhm.
things now start to escalate. You
Yeah.
said you found out about the gambling in
Yeah.
2016.
2016, but
Okay.
there's a lot that happened. Is it okay to share some of the
Sure,
things that
absolutely.
happened before that? So just our first few months of marriage, again, we didn't have a lot of financial conversations. And I think in my mind, I was like, let's just join, let's be in the same checking account and do this together. And we did. And thankfully, years later, that my name was on that checking account because that helped me later on. But yeah, he would put his paychecks in there. But within the first, maybe it was 6 months of our marriage, I discovered he had a separate checking account that he was keeping for me. And he ended up keeping that our whole marriage. And it was something that was kind of, and this is a common pattern. I don't know if Edgardo can relate to this or anyone else that's going to listen to this. There were so many things that happened that were huge red flags, major problems that, but daily life is happening and you try to address it and then you got to get on with your day. And as I was thinking back through our story, so many things in the beginning, discovering that checking account, and he would literally sign in, let me see the screen really fast, and then he'd shut it down. And I was like, well, I just saw these, it's like $1,000 in, $2,000 out, all these cash, things flowing in and out. Turns out it was all his gambling and golf funds, but he didn't want to talk about it. And if you don't want to talk about it, then what are we going to do? Like, I can't fight him over it, so that was an issue. He then pulled out what he had left in his retirement to join a very prestigious golf club in South, $50,000 to join this club. And he had about 25 grand left in his retirement and then borrowed 25,000. I knew there was an issue going on. And I just have these flashes of memories. I remember us literally, I'd somehow tapped into the account and found these transactions and questioned him about it. And we literally wrestled this laptop to the ground. Like, it was not normal. Like, he didn't want me to see it. I knew something was wrong. I remember taking a trip driving to San Diego, like later that week, thinking my marriage was going to be over. I went to visit one of my best friends and didn't know what to do. I mean, this was within the first year of our marriage. I remember he owed $45,000. Mind you, he's in his early 30s, $45,000 to a high school friend's parents that he brought to the table when we got married. He owed his dad $200,000 that he had taken out. And so he just basically, looking back, brought these things to the table and said that we have to pay these off. Like, I have these, I owe this money to this friend's parents. And I just remember I didn't know what to do with it. I had maybe 10,000 of my own credit card debt just from school and my own, making poor choices or whatever. I thought, well, I have some debt too, and we'll just pay this off together. And I remember writing those checks and looking back, I remember we had rent problems right away. Like, somehow we just couldn't pay our rent every once in a while. And I couldn't figure out why. Again, I feel so ridiculous saying this because I was an adult. I had a job. I was working. Like, I thought I knew what I was doing, at that time I was 31 and when we got married, and I had no clue what was going on. But there was this mentality that has continued to this day where I think he just saw me as someone who was working and had an income and could help pay this stuff off. And that was the expectation. And I don't think he was thinking at all about how that impacted me or what that meant, that these were his debts, and whatever had happened in his past was really not my responsibility. But now he has this partner who's bringing in a second income. And I was, for lack of a better way to say it, I was used, to help pay this stuff off. And I was a responsible person. And so anyway, that was the very beginning of our marriage. Started out with those sorts of things.
And did he ever explain these big loans from the friends' parents and his own? Did he explain where the debt came from?
No. He may have talked a little bit about the properties that he purchased, but looking back, I have no idea, and could very well have been connected to whether it was overspending in the market, the housing market or the stock market, or gambling debts, or I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Yeah. Okay. So from there, it really, it was many years of, I think that was how we started. It just was really, really hard and messy right from the beginning, which left me in a position of I was an emotional mess really most of the time. I knew that he wasn't being honest about things. I just didn't know what. We had all these financial problems. I'd write a check to pay rent and it would bounce. And I was trying to keep track of things, but then he was spending things, and I was just really upset all the time. I didn't know what was going on. And so we didn't have much of a relationship, honestly, looking back. Things were just always kind of hard. And by 2012, I was working as a hospice nurse at the time. So many years in hospice, and I loved it. I was very stressful. And so I think between the stress of that and the stress of coming home to someone that I couldn't trust and didn't know what was going on, left me with a lot of health problems. So I remember taking a 3-month leave of absence from work. There was like a 6-month period I had a couple chronic pain issues going on, atypical migraines at that time, but was having pain and tingling and just all kinds of weird things going on, and just really bad anxiety, so in and out of doctor's appointments all the time, just not functioning well. And that was 2 years into our marriage. It was really, really hard. So come 2016, things were not good. I have some memories leading up to that particular year. I remember just trying to find ways to kind of salvage our relationship and connect with him. There was just two things that really stand out. Music is a huge part of my life, and going to concerts and being out for live events and stuff was something that I wanted to do and loved doing. It wasn't something he really wanted to do with me. And I remember I'd invited him to a concert, and I thought it was something he would enjoy. And I remember he reluctantly came, and then shortly after getting to the venue, decided he didn't want to be there. And he went and he sat in his car. And I remember just thinking, this is not normal. This can't possibly be what a normal marriage relationship is like. I was devastated and confused. That word confusion stuck with me until I found Gam-anon, by the way. I just was confused all the time. And I remember I didn't stay very long. It was so uncomfortable that I went out to the car, and he was on the sports sites on his phone at that time. So I don't know what was going on that night, but that's what he wanted to be doing instead.
So he wasn't even hiding it from you. He was
blatantly... No. We didn't talk about it. I didn't know what I was seeing. I had no idea. You
just thought because he was a big sports guy that he was just looking at whatever sports stuff. It didn't really
absolutely
click that it's a gambling thing. Got it.
Yeah, you go to the site and you're watching the scores, right? Like you've bet on all these players. You have to watch every game at all times, and that's all I knew. So I just thought that's where his mind was and what he wanted to be doing, which left me feeling worthless. Basically, like it was just this constant reminder. You're not my priority. I would rather be doing this. What you want to do doesn't matter. I'd rather be doing this. And so, and then also too, I was remembering today, we had talked about learning Korean together. And anyway, it was something we talked about. I ended up signing up for these night classes, thinking that would be fun for us to do, something I was interested in. And I remember him deciding not to go. I don't remember how I found this out, but he was playing poker at a casino with a close friend. It was like every Tuesday night. Mm-hmm. So after going for a few weeks on my own, I discovered that he was using that time when I wasn't home to go play poker with his buddy. And so I stopped going to the classes because it just was really sad. So just a couple examples of how not pleasant the things were going. Come 2016, mind you, with the time that he was around, that's a lot of what things were like. I remember he took me out to dinner one night and he made up this whole story that he had to go to Colorado for a business trip because his partner just had a new baby, which was true. He did have a brand new baby. So he couldn't go on the trip. So my husband had to go in place of him. And it was this whole thing. And this also was a common theme in our relationship, where when he would connect with me, it was usually because he wanted something. And so he hadn't taken me out to dinner in a long time. And it was this date to then basically during the dinner present this idea to get me to say okay. And that, I don't know what you call that. I mean, but it was such a common theme throughout our whole relationship, this whole asking permission to do these things. I'm not sure what that was, but it wasn't, to me, that wasn't a healthy two adults coming together, making financial decisions together, planning their life together. Like, he just wanted to do what he wanted to do.
Manipulation is
manipulation.
What,
okay,
we
well, there
call
we go.
it. Being the addict, recovering addict, that's what we do. We create these situations to convince people to give us what we want. I mean, it's classic science. Yeah, so what was he that night laying out for you?
That he had to go on this trip to Colorado. So he goes on the trip, and I knew something was up. And I found that he was on a golf trip in Nebraska with a group of men, and they were traveling all over to different states, do all this golf stuff. And at this point, so much had happened. And I thought, what else is he hiding? And so I started digging more. And that's when I found in his work backpack, like he had this backpack, he would put all his work paperwork in, 9 months worth of IRS statements that were addressed to me, that he had been hoarding. We owed at that point, it's like $260,000 in back taxes that I wasn't aware of. I think it was through cell phone records. I pulled because we were on the same cell phone plan, I could see his calls. And I just started calling through to see like who he was calling. And sure enough, the poker room was somewhere he called a lot. And I didn't understand what that meant at the time. But I guess he would call, I'm guessing you call ahead to find out what games are going on, or I'm not sure. But yeah, there were a lot of very frequent calls, like sometimes daily. So I found out where that casino was. And some of this is very vague, so I'm going to try to piece this together, because this was kind of the big finding. We were in counseling at the time. He came home from the trip, and I think I presented all of this stuff to him. It was horrible. And there were a lot of behaviors around, I would literally show him something or declare that I knew something, and he would literally tell me to my face, like, that's not what you're seeing. That's not real, and I've heard story after story of the same kind of behavior in my Gam-anon meetings. It really messes with your mind. I don't know how else to say that. Like, it really messed with my mind. And so yeah, so that was hard. And then a close friend of mine who I worked with, I don't remember how this conversation came up. I was probably just sharing with her about all this. Turns out she had 2 cousins that worked the high stakes poker table at that casino that he had been frequenting. Turns out well before I had met him. So this is 2016. We've been together 10, 11 years total. So he had been living in San Francisco, I think 10 years before I met him. So I don't know how long he's been gambling, but long story short, my friend and I connected with them, and they told me, I asked them to let me know when he was there. And that's how I found out where he was, at the time that he was there. And I remember I left work and I drove to the casino, and he was sitting there at a poker table. It was like 1:00 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. And I remember just being so confused, like, what in God's name is going on? Like, what is this? Like, why are you here? How often do you come here? Like, just all these questions. And I asked him to come out to the car to talk with me. And I remember he I don't know how much chips are worth, or I'm sure there's a variety. Literally, chips were falling out of his pocket on the floor. Like, he was trying to gather whatever he had on the table. It was just a scene out of a movie. And yeah, telling this story, I feel like it was a different lifetime. We went out to the car. I don't remember what I asked, but didn't get a lot of answers. Yeah, I remember I got a ticket on the way driving back to the city. I was driving so fast. I was so out of my mind. I just did not know how to make sense of the IRS debts, him lying. He went on this trip and told me he was somewhere else. And it was just like compiling all of this craziness. So that then led to more counseling. I remember, this is what I just remembered a couple hours ago. I got connected with the CalGets program. So UCLA has this program where they offer free counseling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did therapy with a woman there. I remember he met with gambling therapists. He didn't do any more therapy with him. We were seeing a therapist on our own. And then, so this all happened within like a couple months' time. This was now March of 2016. And we were actually going to go to a concert with friends one night. It was a Saturday night. We were literally ready to go. It was probably 8 o'clock at night. And he sat down, I remember he sat down at the kitchen table and he said, I can't go with you to the concert. I'm leaving on a red eye tonight. He's going to North Carolina on another trip. And at that point, I was done. So this was our first separation. He went on the trip. And I remember I reached out. That was like a Saturday night. Following Monday, I waited till Monday when my therapist was in the office and I called him. And he helped me kind of calm down and write a letter to my husband, asking him to move out. And all I remember about that time is when he got back from his trip, we had $60 in our checking account, our joint checking account. And I must have turned the tracking on his phone because I remember I was able to track him at the time. And he packed a bag. I gave him the letter. We had a discussion, but we had $60 and he left and he went straight to the casino. And I remember thinking then, I think that's when it really hit me. Like something's really wrong because as dismissive as he had been for so many years of me, my well-being, our financial situation, our relationship, all of it, I think to have dwindled down to such a small amount of money, and that's where and I'm asking him to leave because of his behaviors, like that's where he chose to go, was a big wake-up call for me at that time. I remember I went to 2 Gam-anon meetings, one by myself and one, it might have been the first one my friends drove me to. They were at night in person at the time and they sat in the car. I know they waited for me. And I just remember walking into that room, GA and Gam-anon meet side by side. So the gamblers were on one side and in another room. And I remember sitting there 3 women. And I remember them talking about how their husbands were given like a $200 allowance every week and just telling these stories. And I remember leaving there thinking, no way, like, no way is this my life. I'm not doing this. This is not for me. This is not my life. I literally remember having that thought, like, this is not my life. So,
and this time frame wise, because you said this was your first separate. This is still 2016.
This is still early. This is like March 2016 when all this stuff came out.
Wow.
Kind of all at the same time. And then we lived separately. He moved in. His parents lived about 45 minutes south of where we were, and he moved in with them for a while. And I remember his dad calling me, asking me what was going on and were we going to be okay and all of these things. And I'm like, your son is living with you. Like, why are you calling me? I mean, he just didn't speak about anything to anyone. His friends didn't know any of this. I don't know. Maybe you could speak to this, Eric. I don't know if this is a mistake or not, but at that time, I was very vocal with our friends about what was going on. I needed a lot of support. And I found emails from 2 of his closest buddies who I had private conversations with that were a huge support to me at the time. And I was crying out for help for him. But he still, it hurt him so much that I shared with his close friends about what was going on. That came out in a therapy session years later, that was really hard for him. And I feel when I'm with him now, I feel like this resentment from him that he's not admitting that he has a problem. Right. He knows he's not well, and he knows that he needs help, but he's not admitting that his gambling is a problem and that his life is unmanageable. And so maybe it just comes from that place of being in the throes of addiction. But I just remember finding that out and thinking, maybe I made a mistake. And it's prevented me now from sharing any details. I'm not going to his family. I'm not calling up his friends and saying, please reach out to him. This is really on him at this point. At that time, I just always wondered if I did him wrong in some way. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think from the compulsive gambler's perspective, who's still in the addiction, having gone through this, what you just described about him saying, "How dare you tell my closest friends," or express concern or whatever. All as that is from a compulsive gambler standpoint, from my experience, is it's your own shame and your own guilt about what is really going on. And it's deflect blame to anybody else other than where it really needs to be. And that's pointing in the mirror and saying, "You're the problem." And that's what that reminds me of, because that's what I would do all the time. And that's back to manipulation and lying and deceit. And, that's the classic signs of an addict for sure.
Yeah.
So let's take a break there. Thank you, Gina. That's riveting stuff and a lot of background to get us to a big part of where the story really starts to turn really, really ugly. So we're going to break and then come back, and then we're going to keep moving forward and then get to the place where you found amazing recovery in Gam-anon. So we'll be back in a minute in the Gambling Recovery Lounge. Welcome back into the Gambling Recovery Lounge. All right, so we're going to continue on now. This really, really powerful story with Gina. Thank you for all your authenticity, Gina. And I think Edgardo wanted to pop in with a question about some of the things we were talking about before the break.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of go back a little bit. It depends on, if you want to talk about whether this was from your childhood or even just while you were with your husband. And it really has more to do with the gambling itself. I know you said, you didn't really understand it, you didn't participate in it, but did you ever gamble? Was there ever any gambling growing up, even if it was just card playing? Was gambling ever a part of your life in any way?
It wasn't, not at all. I mean, I didn't even have parents that like played cards with their friends, kind of a thing. Yeah, I can't think of no betting, no nothing. Not that I can think of.
So it really truly was this foreign thing
Hmm.
of what he was doing just was not a concept that you really understood and more as an addiction.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, even thinking back, I didn't question it at all, and my mind was not going to a place of, oh, this person must have a problem. He's just going out. He can afford this, I guess, and he's having a good time, which is probably what I was thinking.
Yeah, and I can relate to that only because I sort of went through the same thing. I knew Eric gambled. I knew he went to the racetracks. I knew he watched sports, but I never thought that I didn't understand what it was. I just thought, oh, well, he's going to have fun, you know?
Right.
So I totally get that whole, well, that's what he does. It's fun. It's his job. It's whatever it is. But,
Mhm.
all right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you.
Even thinking back to the sports betting, and it was more of, gosh, he's on his phone a lot. This is taking up so much of his time. He's so distracted. My mind never went to a place of, he must have a gambling problem ever,
Yeah,
which is shocking to me
no,
now.
no,
I
actually,
just,
what this reminds me of, and we talk a lot about this in recovery, it's the stigma of society at large not really understanding how gambling can really be an addiction compared to like substance abuse, right? And I think that is because society relatability. So, for example, most people of adult age have probably partaken in some alcohol, right?
mhm.
So, but not everybody has gambled. Um, and so when you start talking about trying to understand how a behavior can catapult into something so unbelievably horrific that it destroys lives, when you hear about an alcoholic getting to that place, I think most of society can relate because they can understand, well, when I drink, I've been drunk before. So I understand that good feeling about getting buzzed and getting happy and having a good time with friends. I could see how somebody could get carried away with that. And then it can become worse and more often. And all of a sudden now you're lost in it. But I think gambling, a lot of people can't relate to it. A, because it's not a substance going in your body like drugs or alcohol. And B, if you haven't really gambled like you're describing in your life or like Edgardo in his life, it's really hard to ask somebody like that who's had that life experience or hasn't had that life experience to understand somebody like me where it became this full-fledged disaster that completely took over my life. And what you're describing about the journey with your husband and what appears to have done to him, and continues to do, right? So I think that's a really good discussion. So when you left off, you were talking about in 2016, you go to these, this Gam-anon meeting, and you're leaving there going, oh my God, there is no way this is what I signed up for. I am not living this life. So talk from there, kind of talk a little bit about what's going on in the subsequent years.
Yeah. So we stayed separated 3-4 months, and looking back, I actually remember that time being very similar to the time I'm having now. So as hard as it was, I was really finding myself at that time. I remember having conversations with friends, going out with friends, doing things I'd been wanting to do. So I just was thinking about that and wanted to share that, because I think there's this sense of kind of like freedom and rediscovery that's happening in my recovery. And I got a glimpse of that back then, which I wish I had paid more attention to then. But we then reconciled, and that was really 99% me. My husband showed up really the same way that he is showing up now, which is very apathetic, not really trying at all. The therapist we were seeing at the time actually fired us. I didn't know that was a thing, but told us he couldn't work with us anymore. And I remember him telling my husband, you're literally moving through mud. Like, I can't work with you guys. You're showing up to these appointments, but you're not trying. You're not doing anything to salvage this relationship or work on yourself. And I don't remember at that time that the gambling was talked about much, which is interesting. And the years that went by up until our separation in 2023, there were multiple therapists that we worked with as well. And the gambling was never really addressed. I ended up moving out of San Francisco during that separation back to my hometown to be close to family. There were some other things I wanted to pursue at that time. Again, was kind of rediscovering myself. We didn't have children yet. I was getting close to late 30s at that point, and just, wanted to get on with my life, and which was a good sign. Like, I had life in me to live. And so I started making some decisions that worked for me. He ended up wanting to come as well, and we made amends without doing any work on ourselves or our relationship, honestly. And as I mentioned, I think earlier in our talk, that life just goes on. You're working a job, you have hopes and dreams for yourself, you set some goals. We were doing the best we could, and I kind of forgot about things for a period of time, which is crazy to think about. But it wasn't until 2021. COVID was a very hard time. That same behavior that we talked about on our honeymoon was very much who he was during COVID, just antsy. I used to think of him as he'd get manic, and he'd have to get on a plane and fly to the desert, or where was it hot? Where was it not cold? Where was COVID where were things not restricted? And golf stayed open pretty much that whole time, I believe. And so he was on and off planes. At that point, I had a baby, our daughter, and he was traveling around. It was just a really hard time, just very selfish and very focused on himself. And then come 2021, I don't remember what instigated this. We had continued financial problems. At this time, there was also a lot that happened around the IRS debt. He was not dealing with any of this. I was making sure checks were getting written to his dad to pay for the debts he owed him. I was calling the IRS, getting payment plans started, because it just was not getting dealt with. So that was all, I guess, looking back and thinking about the program, enabling this person in a way and taking care of these things, or trying to. But something came up in 2021. I don't remember what. I was really sick at this point. I just want to stress, I talked about 2012 and my health was going downhill. being a new mom and all that came with that. And this years and years of stress and dishonesty and everything was really taking a toll on me, like seriously. I remember just being in and out of my doctor's office, begging him, like, check, like, take labs on me, check my heart, like something's wrong. I'm not well. I was so stressed out all the time. And we were having negative interactions all the time. And so I want to stress that because that's what really led me to get to my breaking point. I have a little girl now who's watching me, my every move, and needs me. And I'm with someone who's never dependent, never reliable, not healthy. So I was working, I'd gotten a job at night, but I was working till like 12:31 in the morning. And then he would leave last minute. I mean, just crazy behavior. He'd approach me during my shift. We'd get her to sleep. It's 8:00 at night. I can't even be interrupted. I can't walk away from my computer. And he's like, I'm leaving tonight. I'm leaving on a plane in an hour. Like, I'll be back in, 4 or 5 days or something. Like, and I would lose it. I was losing my mind. In fact, I just want to share a little story. A good friend had recommended this HBO series recently. It has nothing to do with my life, but one of the lead characters in it, this woman, she had actually been in an abusive relationship. She was very emotionally unstable herself. There's this scene. I'm watching this show late one night. It was a few weeks ago. Some friend of hers she thought betrayed her, and she follows her into this elevator and just starts berating her, like literally lost her mind, saying terrible, horrible, awful things to her. And film is like, I just feel like when things are done well, like it changes you, right? Like, I don't know if you've ever seen a movie or a show where you're just sitting there and you can't, weeks later, you're still thinking about it, right? This was one of those moments. I was so uncomfortable watching this scene. And the reason why was because that's who I became. Like, she was losing her mind. And I remember nights, my little girl's asleep and I would pull him out into the garage. I'm like, we have to go to the garage. Like, I have to be somewhere where my daughter can't hear me. And I would just sob. I mean, I thought my eyeballs were going to come out of my head trying to get this person to tell me the truth, explain what was going on, connect emotionally with me. Like, just thinking about it makes me feel sick because years of that. I mean, it was just, and I want to say this for anyone that's listening, like, that's not okay. Like, I should not have I take responsibility for that. I should never have stayed so long that I became that person. But I did. And so anyway, that's what was going on for quite a few years. Back in 2021, all I was going to reference was that it was another dig into our cell phone records. And now we lived in another town and I found all these calls to the poker room. I don't remember what instigated that. And from there, I found out he had been gambling regularly 20 minutes away. He'd found a casino here and probably through COVID, I don't know. And now he lives close to it. And when we separated, that's where he was frequenting. I mean, it's like his home base now. Yeah, that kind of disrupted everything again. And I think I had gotten so sick emotionally and physically and was needing to make changes. That's when I went back to Gam-anon. I want to say maybe 6-7 weeks. I was trying to go to meetings. It's the same meeting I attend now in the early part of the week. It's an incredible group of people, but I was working my nursing shift and watching the meetings at the same time. I remember telling him about it, hoping and wishing he would come to meetings too. It was just a different mindset. I was getting closer, but it was really more about us. It wasn't just about me at that time. And I couldn't sustain it. I don't even think I had the thought of trying to go during the day. I mean, I was taking care of my daughter during the day and then working at night. So anyway, that was 2021. Life continues.
Did he ever say to you in all this time or even at that crux as you're going out back into meetings, did he ever utter the words, I'm a compulsive gambler. I know I'm addicted. Did that ever really? No. It was just, this is what I do.
Yeah. There was a lot of, well, poker's different, that sort of a thing. Never talked about the sports stuff. Mind you, during these years, 2021 especially, and then leading up to the separation, I remember I got my hands on his iPad. Somehow got into his iCloud account. I could see what he was actively doing on his phone on the iPad, and he was on Bravado all the time, which I now know what that is. But yeah, I mean, he's just all kinds of online, crypto stuff. And
Okay.
DraftKings was an issue. Thinking back, that just popped in my mind just now. Wow, that was a problem in the beginning of our marriage. All these $25 everywhere, and we would have budget conversations, and I would pull the statements and say, well, what is all, you're not telling me that you're not tallying up the DraftKings $25 like every other day. Why is that not included in our budget?
Right.
And it didn't make sense to him. He was like, well, that's different.
Yeah, it's as you're saying certain things, we have these 20 questions in GA, to assess where we're at in the addiction. And a couple of things you just said, like one of the questions is, was I hesitant to use gambling money for normal expenditures? And I mean, this is just what you're describing. Like, oh yeah, that 25 doesn't count. That's not really a thing.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. When I found his wad of 3,000 right before we separated, I swear something from out of this realm whispered in my ear, he has a wad of cash somewhere. I had never thought of that before. It came to me out of nowhere in the middle of the day. And I started searching all the pockets in the closet, all his clothes, everything. And sure enough, there's $3,000 wrapped up in one of his pockets. And I thought, I wonder how many years that he's been doing this. And here we are, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. His wife is working holidays, weekends, nights, taking care of our child, while he jet sets around and does all of this, and he's hoarding money. Just can't even. But no, so going back, I just realized what your question was. No, he has not admitted that he has a gambling problem. Yes, he has said time and time again, he needs help. He knows he needs help of some sort, but he doesn't know how to get it. We were just in a text exchange this morning. I'm working on myself, he says, so I don't know what that means. I've been hearing, it's like him saying, I'm stuck, when he was sitting on my porch that night before 20 years ago. It's all the same stuff he's been saying over and over and over again. Nothing's changing. So
has he ever apologized?
He apologizes a lot, but it's
empty.
It's a very empty apology. He takes no responsibility for himself, has no ability to empathize with me or what my experience. I mean, I think there's some of that. I think he's apologizing because he does feel badly about what he's done. And he'll say, it's not what I meant to do. I didn't mean for things to be that way. I'm like, well, you've been told year after year after year, like me sobbing in front of you or yelling or losing my mind, like that didn't happen overnight, and I'm a very communicative person. I am not a meek, quiet, passive wife by any means. There was a lot of talking, a lot of sharing, a lot of seeking help and support from day one, and doing everything that I could to love him and support him. I think that's the part where I really lost myself, and that's what I'm learning in my recovery now is where did I fail here? Like, how was I showing up, whether it's from my childhood? There's no doubt that plays a role in my life and my relationship with my dad and all that happened, and how I've shown up in this as this martyr that, that wants, so committed, so wanting this to work. Anytime GA talks about the fantasy world, I'm like, well, I'm in Gam-anon and I had my own fantasy world, honestly. Like I lived in hope and fantasy from day one and I fought hard for it. And I'm learning now what it feels like to live in reality. And it's kind of painful sometimes, but it's reality and it's healthy and ultimately feels so much better. And it's accepting, this is my truth and that there are things I'm not willing to do anymore. I went against my values, my morals. Like, I love this person so much and so hard and believed so much in him and so much in the fantasy of who he could be and who we could be that I completely lost myself, and I get to work on that.
So then what happens in 2023 in July?
One thing I didn't mention is that drinking is also a bit of a problem. Probably not your typical problem. It's more of a binge drinking situation that goes hand in hand with this golf. And I think with the little bit I've learned from just some GA members in meetings that, I think it's all tied together, and it makes me wonder if it's tied in with his losses potentially. Maybe he drinks a lot when he's not. I wonder if there's poker games that happen after golf. I had someone share with me that maybe these people he's trying to build relationships with aren't as good at poker as he is, and aren't as good at golf as he is. And so he probably wins a lot. Maybe he sets it up that way. So anyway, their drinking had been a problem for quite some time. But again, he's not drinking at home. He's not a daily drinker. And it was March of 23. And all those awful things I had shared had been happening. And it was a Friday. I was working my shift, trying to take care of my daughter. He'd come home late. The goal was that I would start my shift in the afternoon and he'd be there to care for her. And that rarely happened. And he came home really, really drunk. And he came in and he laid down on the couch and just fell asleep. And it was about 6:30 at night. And I was working till 12:31 in the morning and had our little girl. And I thought, okay, this has just been going on long enough, and I know he had been golfing that day and who knows what else. And it's just all these behaviors had just all come together. He wasn't managing anything financially. We're living basically paycheck to paycheck. It just was horrible. I was working so hard, and I do want to say too, leading up to this time, this was really my bottom day, but leading up to it for a good 6 months, I was planning what if I needed him to move out? Like, could I support myself and my little girl? Mm-hmm. And I had hired a financial advisor for myself. Mind you, my husband is a financial advisor. I remember that upset him. I opened a college fund for her. I did a lot of things that we had talked about doing that just weren't getting done. I was able to run numbers and figure out that I could support us if I needed to. I'm renting from my mom. I'm in a totally safe, secure place. And I told her what was going on. She's known always what's going on. So I had prepared all this stuff and I was kind of ready if I needed to be. And so when he came home in that state that night, I think that was the first time I realized that I'm the one allowing him to have a key to this house and put the key in the door and come home in this condition, and to continue all these behaviors in this way. And so that's when I told him he would need to move out. My night job at that time, there was some stuff going on at work. There was a new pilot program I was going to be managing that was starting up the 1st of July. And I'd be working during the day, which changed everything for me because getting childcare at night was hard. I was then up half the night and I didn't have anyone to help me in the morning. So I was running on no sleep. All that changed for me. And so I was empowered, which I have to say, I think a lot of people in my position don't have these luxuries, the financial support, their own career, very dependent on their spouse. Thank God that wasn't me. And also leading up to this, I had tried to start setting boundaries. I had separated our car insurance. We didn't have a lot of joint stuff, thank goodness. But I separated our cell phone bills. I remember him telling me like how stupid I was that I was doing this. And I'm like, no, I'm not actually really smart. Like, you're not paying these bills. You're not taking care of things. Like I have to start becoming more independent. And so all of that happened. And then this bottom happened and I set the boundary and got back into the CalGets, was able to get more sessions through the state. That counselor helped me tremendously with all kinds of things. For example, just understanding the mentality of someone with a gambling addiction. Mm-hmm. My husband walked out of here with a backpack the day he left. A couple months went by, what do I do with this stuff? How do I continue this process? That therapist was able to help me figure out, you go pay for a storage unit, you pay cash, you give them a month's notice, and then you go pay 1 month's cash and for it, and you put all of his stuff in there. And my mom and I moved all of his stuff, and I followed that process. And it was like slowly but surely I was gaining more and more control over my life. Mind you, this was devastating and hard, but it was also very empowering too, I think, after so many years of living that kind of lifestyle. And then come September, so that was July 1st, I started in program in August. I thought I was calling into that Gam-anon meeting that I had attended in 2021. And turns out I called into the joint meeting that we are in together. That was one of the most powerful experiences I've ever had.
So this meeting she's describing, which is a powerful meeting, for those that aren't aware, it's a combined Gam-anon and GA meeting where both programs come together on the same meeting. Literature is distributed and read in both programs, and then everybody has an opportunity to share about their experiences from both programs. And it's a really, really powerful meeting. And yeah, that's where we met Gina. So
Yeah. So I think starting with that meeting, many of you stayed after with me. And I think it was at that time to have people with a gambling addiction say to me, you are doing the right thing. Keep doing what you're doing. All these steps you're taking, as painful as it must be for you, you're doing the right thing, was so powerful and so helpful. And then getting back into my Gam-anon group, which is probably the most helpful of all. I mean, our joint group has helped me tremendously, but to be in a room week after week, I think back to, I mean, literally crying the whole meeting, distraught. I remember one meeting saying, I think I'm crazy. I think I'm losing my mind. And one of the ladies who's been there like 25 years, she's like, Gina, do you have a therapist? Like, I think you need more support. And I did at the time, but it was so hard. It was so hard, you guys. But I made it through and they carried me through. And the more I showed up, the more I learned from their stories. The literature saved my life. I cannot speak highly enough about, we have so many booklets in Gam-anon. They are all fantastic. I devoured those materials the first 6 months. I mean, I would just make time. I would sit at the first couple of weeks. I sat, there's one called In Our Own Words, and it's just story after story after story. And I just would sit at a coffee shop and just read and read and read. And I felt my confusion went away. That's what I was talking about earlier. I felt so confused for so many years. And I had so many incredible friends and family in my life that loved me and tried to support me and tried to help me and give me good advice. Like I said, I'm not a quiet person. I like being in relationship with people. People know about me in my life. I was always trying to seek help and support and understand, like, what is a normal marriage like? Like, what's wrong with mine, you know? And nobody could help me until I got into this program. Nothing really made sense until I got into this program.
So on that note, you know, where you're at now, so now we're in 2025 here in January, and you've had about a year and a half going through the Gam-anon process and your own journey. How did you finally arrive now at a formal divorce proceeding? If you can talk a little bit about that, because it's such a long emotional journey with multiple separations and trying so hard to somehow make it work. But you finally got to this place where clearly there's some finality for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I feel so sad inside, and you can see me, I feel like smiling at the same time, because it's been such a beautiful, as I said in the beginning, a spiritual process for me. I filed for legal separations September of 24, and that I just can't recommend enough for people in my position, because it empowered me. It gave me I was so safe and secure at that point. My money was all mine. I found a great attorney through Gam-anon, actually someone other people had worked with, and for not that much money. We didn't have to go to court. So that's another thing. My husband is not challenging me on anything. This could not be going better. It's very sad that he's not working towards salvaging anything. However, it's given me full custody of our daughter. It's, you know, we have a huge, you know, contract basically that the attorney wrote up for us. It says, you know, whatever, aside from the IRS, she can't really do much about that, but whatever debts he has are not mine. We hadn't combined a lot of things. So it was just very clean and easy. So that helped me arrive here too, is just seeing this person who's not getting better, who's not trying for himself or his family. You know, at this point, he just, at 1 minute he's saying he's sad and he wishes things were different. And the next he's like, we just don't work together. You know, he's just kind of like all over the place. I think at 45 years old, I am thinking about all the years that I wanted to have a deep, connected, authentic, intimate relationship with my partner. And I'm made to be in a partnership like that. And this wasn't that. And I think waking up one day, that before I asked him to move out, this happened shortly before that, where I remember thinking, like, what if I got cancer? Like, what if something happened to me? Like, I'm going to wake up at 50 and this is going to be worse. Like, it's only getting worse. This is not the life I want to live. I care deeply about this person. I want nothing more than our family to stay together. But for me, it started out, I think, recognizing who I am and how God made me and what the desires of my heart are, and that I want to seek that out in my life. I may never have that, that's not promised to me. However, I can dream about that and I can work towards it. And staying in the situation I'm in with someone who is not pursuing me, not pursuing his family, not working on himself, I absolutely am not going to stay married to someone who is lying to me, who actively has a gambling problem and not getting help. All of it. Like I'm not going to do it anymore. So that all came about. However, it's been a process of slowly going through, I think, what it ultimately has been, a grieving process. I think back one of the first months during my recovery, I went down to Big Sur and I stayed at a monastery. It was a silent retreat. No one speaks to each other, but you can request to meet with one of the monks if you want to. So I did. And I just remember that being a really powerful time for me. And I sat in a quiet room with this man and told him what was going on. And turns out his father had a gambling problem. And we had this whole conversation about it. And he did nothing but empower me to continue making the decisions I was making. We talked all about faith and God and the church and all. I have all these questions. Like, that's a big part of my life, but it is something I have always challenged and been thoughtful about and have a lot of questions about, a lot of issues with. So it was just this fascinating conversation. And here, this person was encouraging me to make decisions that maybe society would say, no, like you should try harder or stick this out or whatever. So my process started there, going away a lot by myself. Thankfully, I'm in a position, I think, being a little bit older, I had the money to do that once in a while, honing in on taking care of my daughter. But just, I think for me, it's been this beautiful time for me to finally do what I think I always wanted to do in my marriage, which was to step away from the chaos, connect with my higher power, and connect with myself and grow. I want to grow. I want to grow. And so I absolutely can say at this point, and one of my best friends just said this to me on the phone the other day, I've known for over 25 years. I've done everything I can. Like, there's no regrets. I will never look back on this time. If my daughter comes to me at 25 years old and says, Mom, like, how come this didn't work out? Like, I did everything that I believe I could do, and probably for too long and probably a little too hard. I believe that, there's nothing more I can do at this point. And so I've allowed myself to feel the pain. There was a period of time of like 3 months. We were really into international films. That was something we enjoyed doing together. I went to the Toronto Film Festival last year. It was something I wanted to do for over 10 years. We were going to do that together. I went by myself. It was fantastic. I watched all these movies. I listened to old music. There was a grieving process and I've journaled the whole time, which is so incredible. Like, allowing myself to work through this in a way, it's hard to explain, but that has brought me here now. And deciding to file for divorce was the exact same experience. I gave it time and I felt the pain. I remember being away one weekend. I went to Sonoma and was deep in my grief, like deep, deep, deep. And that went on for quite a few weeks. And what came of that was this knowing that this was the next step. I could almost look back at the weeks prior, the months prior, and go, okay, that's why the last couple months, let's say, were so painful, because something in me knew that this was the decision that I was going to arrive at. Mm. And then when I arrived, there was no question. I just was so convicted. This is it. So again, I feel so grateful that my process has been, as hard as it's been very clear. It's been a very clear journey. And I know that I don't want to do this another year. I don't want to do this another 5 years. Like, I want my life back. I want to have a good time. I want to be a fantastic mom and be present for her. I have a lot of life to live, and I'm sad that it won't be with him in that way. And I'm getting healthy now. And as hard as some of the days are, I feel fantastic. I mean, something I haven't mentioned, you guys know this from the meetings, but I started walking last January. This was a huge part of my recovery. I was overweight. I was out of shape, good like 30, 40 pounds. I've dropped 30 pounds this year, just starting with walking. Yeah. I've been weight training for 9 months. I just asked the gym yesterday, when did I sign up? Because I know I've been here at least 6 months. I have never been so strong. I'm adding weight every day I go. I mean, I can't even believe what has happened to me physically, emotionally, spiritually by just allowing myself to be who I am and face the pain, like look at it head on, tap into who am I? These were the things I loved to do when I was 25 years old when I met him. You know, I was working out at that time. I was loving music. I mean, I can't tell you the time that money I've been spending the past year going to shows, like just deeply into the things that make me so happy. I'm finally, and maybe appreciate it more. Like I'm finally living my life, because for so many years I wasn't living, you know, I was just barely surviving.
It's such a powerful story. I mean, when you talk about what you were just talking about with all these life transforming things that are happening for you now, I mean, it gives me goosebumps, because as the compulsive gambler in recovery, 3.5 years now, like those similar life transformation things have occurred because of my recovery program. The messaging from you tonight is so incredible to me, because I encounter in GA a lot of members who may have a spouse who isn't in Gam-anon or isn't seeking recovery on their own. They may be sticking in the relationship, but not really being an active participant alongside the compulsive gambler in their program. And your story is so incredible, because you're seeking recovery for you, and you recognize that this gift of Gam-anon and its 12-step program has afforded you the opportunities that we get as compulsive gamblers in our recovery program. The same life transformations are possible when you really want to work on yourself. And that leads kind of into the next question I have for you, is the advice that you might have for the person out there who might be in a similar situation like you, and whether the compulsive gambler in their life is or isn't in recovery, the messaging about what a Gam-anon 12-step program can do for somebody in your whole life, but somebody's hesitant to say that. I don't want to work on myself. I don't want to have to go to meetings. I don't want to have to work on the steps. All this stuff, it's not my problem. I didn't sign up for this. All the things you've described throughout your journey, but you've now had this miraculous life transformation because you believed in the program and you've dived in. What's your messaging to somebody who just can't quite get there and doesn't feel like that's a path that they want to go down?
It's a great question. I have a lot to say. I think the first couple of things I want to address is the fear. So I know for myself, two things. I wasn't ready. I had a lot of wonderful people in my life trying to speak truth into me and guide me and help me and support me. I had to go through this the way that I went through it. I know that for sure right now. I wouldn't have my daughter. I wouldn't be in Gam-anon. I wouldn't be recovering in the ways I just described, through music and exercise and friendships and things. I know that for sure. I would probably be a resentful, angry person going through a divorce. I sat with my husband and presented the divorce to him and actually felt compassion for him and was able to lovingly detach and take care of myself at the same time. And I was literally out of my body experience, witnessing myself be that person I never knew I could be. And it's because of this program. So I also want to say too, that my story and the way that this is panning out for me is not everyone's story. I know for myself, years ago, to hear, oh, you had to legally separate, oh, you divorced, I don't want that to happen to me. That doesn't happen to everyone. A lot of people do go into recovery and people work on it together. But I think the biggest thing I can stress, and this is more just a life experience thing and a life lesson that I'm learning, is that I think in relationships, it's easy to get enmeshed with each other, right? Like you love this person. And this is something I've been able to give to my fellow Gam-anon members that was given to me, is there's no judgment, right? Like no one's telling me in the program, my husband's a total asshole and I should leave him. And, that's what I was told from outside. And that's the part that I get it. I get why you're saying that. Some of that's probably true, but that wasn't helpful for me. What was helpful is this non-judgmental focus on yourself, work this program that is going to help you ultimately grow your own character, work through your own dark side and struggles. We all have that. For me, as I said a few minutes ago, I was actively in a marriage, knowing in the deepest part of my soul that even though I was in a marriage relationship, ultimately, at the end of the day, it's me and my higher power at the end of the day. And that relationship needed to be worked on. And my husband knows that too. We would talk about that a lot, but you get entangled with each other and then it's hard to separate. And I think this program right from the beginning helped me see whether I'm married to an addict or not, working on myself and having that interdependent relationship. There's this beautiful poem. We actually read it at our wedding. It's called On Love. It talks about not crossing over, but staying interdependent, like these two columns side by side, like you're living your separate lives together. And sometimes you're out here and sometimes you're further apart and sometimes you're closer together, but you're two separate people. And I think this program could help anyone, not just someone who is in relationship with an addict, if that's something that you seek in your own life. So I think for me, that's been the biggest lesson that I've learned, and hopefully what I can share with others. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I love it. Garda?
Yeah, kind of going along that same line or the same line of questioning, I wanted to ask it in a slightly different way, which is, what would you tell your younger self, knowing now what you've learned and what you've gone through on your journey?
That's painful. This is an interesting question, Edgardo, because I remember saying early on in program, I was telling friends, I was telling people in program, I feel like I'm 25 again. And I really do. I feel great. I feel great in a lot of ways, but who I was then before all of this is coming back to me now. And I think I just didn't know any better. I didn't have a lot of faith in myself. I didn't have a lot of self-confidence. So I think it would be a long talk about how much I matter as an individual and that I don't need to be in a relationship with a man to feel complete or feel secure in this world, because I think there was a lot of that for me in my early 20s. I think I wanted to be married. I wanted to have a family. I wanted to be in partnership with someone. I think to be out, for me personally, I feel embarrassed sharing this. This is very personal, but this is a huge part of my recovery. To be out in the world just on my own and not in that type of a relationship, I feel unsteady. I feel insecure. I think being with him, I loved him. We had a great time together. But I felt like I didn't have to think about those things anymore. It was like, okay, like that piece is done. Like I'm settled. I'm going to stick this out. I'm going to make this work. We talked more about having kids than being married. We very much wanted to be parents together. And look at us. We had this perfect child that we still get to raise together, But yeah, I think I would have a long talk with myself about what it is to just be me and to find hope and security in just being me and not thinking about me in relationship to somebody else, whether it's a romantic relationship or a friendship or anything, that I'm good. We are all good inside, and that God is what I call it, like loves us no matter what, that there's a completeness in that. There's a completeness in it, yet there's a lot of work to do, if that makes sense. And I would encourage that younger Gina to just continue to pay attention, to listen to herself, to listen to her intuition and her gut, because it's really, really effing good. And I wish I had paid attention then. Again, I can't go back. I have no regrets. I'm so thankful for what I have, but I will definitely be paying a lot closer attention going forward.
Well, Gina, this has been so amazing, because your bravery in talking about your story, first of all, because there's so few people out there who are willing to come and do something like this. And, gambling destroys a lot of lives. I know there's the stat that I've heard many times. being in the rooms of GA and in other recovery spaces, that for every compulsive gambler, we harm 7 people terribly in our lives. And so the number of people that show up for themselves who have been impacted by people like me and talk about openly and vulnerably their stories, like you do and like Edgardo does, and other people in the rooms of Gam-anon and that I've met too, and that you guys are obviously more connected to. It's a fraction of people that are out there who are in your shoes and just have fear of coming forward, I think, and really feeling the ability to come out and tell that story and be heard. And you know, I have such appreciation for people um, like you, because I know the amount of damage that I did to Edgardo, and hearing you share so openly, not just tonight, but every week since we met you a year and a half ago, about your journey. It's a reminder to people like me of the damage that we've done to people in our lives. And as I've told you offline, as far as your husband goes, God willing, someday he will hopefully find a way, if he's really a compulsive gambler, to get help to save his own life and to others around him that he's impacted, and maybe some healing can begin. But until the compulsive gambler is ready to stop gambling more than they're ready to keep gambling, it just doesn't work. There's countless examples of that. And just know for sure that it has nothing to do with you, and your love and all the things that you tried to do. Um, we are very sick people when we're in addiction, and the addiction takes over everything. And until you're ready to make that choice to get help, the addiction will continue to control all aspects of your life. And I think what you've done in your life and finding your own place of recovery is an extraordinary story. And I'm so grateful that we know you and that you continue to bring hope and light. And you've shown that by example. And anybody who gets a chance to come in contact with you, they're going to be a lot better off for it. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Eric.
Really love you, and really appreciate you coming on tonight and sharing your story. It's going to help so many people for sure.
Thank you for even considering me for this. I have so much love for the both of you, and everything you just said to me is exactly why I'm able to not only make the brave decisions I've made, but why I'm healing. I mean, for you to speak about what it's like to be in addiction, how you felt about other people or lack thereof at that time, that this isn't about me. That's it right there. I mean, that's the nugget. Like that is what has allowed me to separate and not be angry. I sat in the car that day and told him I was filing for divorce, and I wasn't angry and I wasn't resentful. I wasn't all the things we talk about in our literature anymore, because I'm actually healing, so thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you. Edgardo, any final words of wisdom?
Just thank you so much for all of your shares. You mean so much. You and I have had very long conversations, and it's just been a pleasure getting to know you and seeing your growth and your journey. You bring so much to our meetings. You bring so much to my recovery, to our recovery. So thank you so much.
Thank you. You guys mean so much to me.
We're here to help each other and help save lives out there. And I think tonight, a lot of lives are going to be impacted. And thank you again, Gina, so much for doing that.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in to a very powerful experience number 15 in the Gambling Recovery Lounge. And we'll be back soon again with another episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Gambling Recovery Lounge. Have a great night.